So throughout my time using Blender, and especially in the past few months where I haven't had much to do, I've made quite a few car models that I don't know what I'm doing with. I just make them, and then what I end up with is just a model in it's an empty void with maybe an HDRI and maybe a white background, but it really doesn't do the model any justice. Um, you don't see the proper reflections of what it would look like outside, and if you just put an HDRI and render it with a flat background, it's just incredibly boring and also not realistic. So I was looking on Instagram the other day of actual like photographs of cars, and not just like professional looking ones, but ones that people just snap on their phone. Because I wanted to go for something that's realistic, like you go walk into a dealership and you take a photo with your phone, and you try and match the focal length that you have, and you post it on Instagram with a square, and that's really where the realism that I found in this took place. It's how it looks like something you took yourself, but in reality, it's your model. Yeah, so I found this photo of the Porsche in the dealership, and I thought I want to create a similar environment and try and match everything up similar and see how that works out. So I'll leave the credit to where I found the photo in the comments below. But if we dissect the scene, it's really just a room, with walls, a floor that's carpet, and then a little tile area that looks like it's taped down, and then just a cubicle and a couple stands here and there. So these are all pretty, uh, you know, easy things to model. We're going to do them most by hand. A few of the things I actually took from Blend Swap, such as the plant, because it's not really worth, doing that all by yourself. So we're going to try and make everything um, by ourselves, but a couple things are just not necessary for us to make. So the walls, the roof, and the ceiling are pretty straightforward to make. It's just a bunch of planes. I did one plane for the tiled area, and I extruded it up to give it height over the actual floor, which is carpet. And I separated the wall from the floor just to have more control. And then I extruded back that section, and then I matched the floor with it. Throughout all this, I used vertex snapping to make sure all my vertex are tight with each other. And I had my my reference in another screen. So yeah, you can move it to yours, and then I just lined up the camera to roughly what I thought was right. The next section that I did was the cubicles. This was also pretty straightforward. It's just a bunch of planes. I used real world measurements, and I assumed it would be about, I think it was 1.5 meters tall, and you can change that in the menu when you place the object. Then it's just extruded a bunch of um, different rectangles to match the reference image. So a border at the bottom, one between them, and then one along the top. So the rest of the modeling was simple, just cubes. This is a little like advertisement board with like places you can put paper, I guess. So I used inset to create those little cutouts, and then I extruded them, and then just move them along. I just really like copied the reference image on what was there. Next was an advertisement board. I made these little metallic like legs or feet to hold them up, and I flipped that and added just a flat plane and angled it back, and then I added a cylinder on top to look like it rolled out like a scroll, um, and then I just moved it into place. I then created this little box. Uh, it was in the reference image, but I didn't actually end up using it because it looks strange to me and it didn't work, but I made it anyways just in case. And then I moved on to adding doors in the back, and then I made a little sign that would later have a texture that was like a bathroom texture. And the final thing to add was the black tape between the tile and the carpet. So I just added a rectangle and added two cuts so that I could have one section higher and then have the cut slowly wrap around the tiled part. And I just did that on both sides. And I added a little cut in between just to show, someone, messed up with the tape and couldn't do it all the way, which just adds a little bit more realism. So the first thing I did was go on HDRI Haven, and I grabbed a quick HDRI. The original one I chose was a bit too bright and white, so I eventually toned down to a more warm one. I also went onto textures.com and then I grabbed a tile texture, and in Blender, if you have Node Wrangler turned on and you click on a principal texture and you click Control Shift T, I do it I do it wrong here because I didn't click on the actual principal shader. But yeah, if you do that, you can get the principal shader set up all done for you, and then your textures are there. So I did this for the tile in the carpet on the floor, and I also used the hue saturation on the tile to match the color closer to the reference image. So I just UV unwrap the plane because when you use image textures, you have to UV unwrap anything to put the texture on it. Hue saturation quickly to change the color of it. And then I just added a bunch of other textures here and there. For example, the carpet. I also added a low roughness tape color down there. And I also grabbed a picture of an employees only sign and a bathroom sign. And with those, I gave it a little metal texture, and I inverted one of them so that I could have the opposite colors. I also found this banner on Google of a Lexus advertisement, and I just slapped that on because it looked like something you would find in real life. So the next thing I did was I downloaded a plant from BlendSwap, and I just toyed around with where I wanted it to go. Eventually, I moved it around a bit, but I settled on having two plants. Another thing that I did was I worked on this border on the floor because I did a couple test renders, and I didn't like how the walls transitioned to the carpet, so I just cut it out and then extruded it. You'll also notice that I'm using a viewport denoiser, which is really useful, and it's really fun. I quite like this new feature in Blender. Yeah, so I just rendered it out to see what I liked. I actually did add a point lamp in that small corner of the room to add a little bit of a warm yellow light because the original photo has that. I also, messed around with what I wanted there. I had this render of a Ferrari that I made, and I thought it'd be cool to throw that in there, but I eventually changed it to a Scuderia Ferrari logo, which looked a lot better. I also started moving the car into the scene, and then yeah, I started working on the just general composition and just fixing up any features in the model that weren't, looking right. So this is the scene that I ended up with to emulate the photo that I found on Instagram. So I added these LED lights along the top, which is just a cube with a emission texture. Because when you look at the reflection on the car paint, it looks like there's actual, like strip lights on the roof, and it looks really good. I gave them a tiny bit of a cool bluish to them, but I didn't like it when I compared it to the uh, reference image because they were actually a bit more warm and yellow. I actually ended up changing the HDRI as well, and I also changed the width of the tiles, and I just made sure to unwrap them so they fit correctly. I added another plat in the background and another painting just to fill up that empty space there. And all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I did do some more tweaking, which I'll show in a later clip, but yeah, this matches pretty closely, and it does look pretty realistic once I rendered it out. Yeah, so this is what the file looks like right now after I've done two renders on it, one where it was just the Porsche, and then one of this itself. The reason I had this here in the first place is because I liked a little reflection that it had on the side that looked like there's something actually, to the right of it, and, like it wasn't the only thing in the scene and everything around it was empty. What I also did was I changed these lights up here to these little circular ones or emission on the inside, and then a kind of casing just for the visual because you can see it from the roof. But yeah, that gives like a grid-like circle pattern on the lighting, which it looks really nice. You'll see that in the final render. And I added this huge area lamp just to make it look like there's a glass window here, and then the sun is shining in, and that actually brightens up the headlight glass, which makes it cleaner to see. So yeah, it's pretty simple, and it doesn't take too long, but it really does give your models some justice. You make, the models you make, I mean, sure, I'm sure they do look good, but they won't look good unless you give them a nice scene around them. Yeah, I'm gonna show you guys the final renders. I hope you liked them, and I hope you learned something. Spend a little extra time to fancy up your models. But yeah, thank you. Like, subscribe. Bye bye. So these are the final renders. I'm really happy with how they turned out, especially the second Ferrari one. Just look really good and really realistic. So if you want to do these with your own, try it out. You can find more of these on my Instagram at Sirac3D. And yeah, both models are actually created by me, if you were curious.